In this video, I'm breaking down how BS and Fredo built a $100,000 per month coaching funnel. I'm going to be showing you every single step that he takes to turn his audience from just viewers into high quality buyers. So I've mapped this video out into 4 parts. Attraction, education, split into 2 different parts, short-term and long-form content, conversion, and what's actually making revenue. So let's get right into it. Every creator that's selling a coaching offer needs to understand that lifestyle equals proof of concept, and BS Fredo portrays this perfectly. What is he recognized for? Well, he's recognized for having a successful dropshipping business, owning nice cars, living a Miami lifestyle, traveling to extremely nice places, but most importantly, his lifestyle. And now looking at his Instagram feed, you can see a photo of him being in a private jet, photos of him being outside of cars, inside of cars, on a quad, him posing with an aesthetic background. It's not too flexy, but it's proving that he is making a large amount of money from what he's actually selling. And this is key. Now, this is something I go over with every client before actually working with them, and then that's ICP, Ideal Customer Profile. And that's an ICP, it's what you want to be attracting to buy your offers. And let me explain this. So his audience have a before, a current state, and an after dream state after they buy his offer. And that's essentially what he wants to be portraying to his audience. Now, before, they're trapped in a 9-to-5 or still in education. They're starting to crack the online business model. Their circle is full of unmotivated people. They're terrified of living that ordinary life. Rarely gets to travel. They're answering to someone else with zero autonomy. And their family doubts their potential. Everyone knows this feeling. And that's exactly what he wants to be portraying. He wants his audience to resonate with him. Hence why we want our clients to often post content that creates that before current state for them, so they can visualize where they want to be and that BS Fredo actually was in the same state. Resonation is key for someone to buy a high ticket offer or any coaching offer. And after buying that high ticket offer or coaching offer, their dream state, they're operating a successful business. They're free to purchase anything they desire. They're surrounded by luxury and high value assets. They're traveling on their own schedule. They're living a life completely on their own terms. They're fully financially independent, something that everyone wants to have. Everyone aspires to be financially independent. They're recognized as a 7-figure business owner and answering to nobody but themselves. Now let's get into education. So with short-form content, you need to understand that it attracts low-quality buyers, essentially a low-quality audience, whereas with YouTube, long-form content, it attracts high-quality buyers. Typically, I love using Instagram, TikTok not so much, but it's very easy to also post on TikTok, just replicate what you're posting on Instagram. Now looking at his profile, specifically his bio, every time I click on someone's page, I immediately need to know what they're doing and what they're about. Here, BS Fredo perfectly illustrates this. Organic dropshipping, I don't really know what he's doing. Now he has a call to action, work with me 101, where he brings you to a link that shows 2 YouTube channels of his, and then obviously his coaching offer. Now looking at his highlights, they're very, very clean, black, 4 different highlights. 1 demonstrates his credibility, very important, and then his storytelling, right, called trenchies. This is what I mean. His audience resonates with his story, right? He's portraying how he went from 1 to 100 by literally just posting clean highlights of him and call to actions of YouTube videos. Now, BSM, that's his coaching offer, what he calls BSM. Here he just literally has credibility. He displays testimonials. This is very important. When selling a coaching offer, you need to have testimonials on your Instagram. And then life, where he literally just, proves that he's living this lifestyle that everyone wants to live. Now clipping, it's 2026. I don't really have to go into what clipping is, but on the much broader scale, it's a very powerful tool to use. He has 11 clipping pages I found now, and what that simply does, we all know what it does. it replicates his content and spreads it to way more accounts. Thus, way more people see his content, see that cold traffic, and that brings him to his page, and then he funnels people through, and potentially these people become buyers. Now, as I've said, he primarily posts top of funnel content on short form, Instagram and YouTube, where he demonstrates his lifestyle, day in the life, Q&As, and his personal perspective of what he thinks, how e-com is going, etc., etc. Very visible here. Now, going into long form content. Now, why does actually long form content attract high quality buyers? Well, very simple, right? For someone to buy a high ticket offer, generally a coaching offer, they need to be consuming at least 1 to 2 hours of your quality content. Now, with top of funnel, they can't really be doing that. That's why short form isn't as good, because someone could technically go on your Instagram page, scroll for 30 minutes, and have consumed all your content, and that's not enough to convince someone to buy an offer for around $5,000, right? So that's why YouTube is such a powerful tool to use and is a must to convert people to buy a high ticket offer. Now, something I always explain, positioning is key, right? So you can't just be posting random videos on YouTube and hope that people will buy your coaching offer. They need to be targeted. It needs to be specific content with an actual intent, right? Well, what is that intent? Well, it's to target the ICP, the ideal customer profile. And as I've explained, an ICP is your ideal customer who you want to be attracting, who will then buy your content. YouTube knows your ICP, and that's why YouTube, again, is such a powerful tool to use. Now, when I say positioning is key, I always dissect it into 4 parts. Top of funnel, which attracts cold attraction. Middle funnel, which essentially you position yourself as an authoritative person and you nurture your audience. And bottom of the funnel, that is conversion intent, right? You're going to be posting testimonials, etc., etc. But going into top of funnel specifically, you can see he gathers, with top of funnel, he gathers more intention, people get to know him more, and the viewer leaves the video more motivated than before. What is also very important to know that top of funnel content gives you the most amount of views. You can see 32,000 views, 15, and his most viewed video, which is simply just, I bought an AMG off of dropshipping, right? It's just demonstrating your lifestyle, and people get attracted to your channel, right? And that's what top of funnel content is mainly for. You want to bring in a bunch of people onto your account, and if they do go down the funnel to middle of funnel and bottom of funnel, they might turn into your ICP. Now, looking at middle of funnel content, here he speaks about his business model, he provides value and trust, and the viewer, important, he leaves the video feeling like they've actually learned something, in comparison to his top of funnel content where they don't. You can see the views have massively dropped, 5.1k, 5.6, 3k, and here it's very important to just explain the problem. In his case, dropshipping, right? BSM Trader does this really well, but the solution isn't always done in middle of funnel content, but more so in bottom of funnel content, right? And this is where you want to be converting. You want to be converting your audience to buy your offer. And again, views have significantly dropped. And what does this do? Well, most importantly, you want to be posting testimonials that show social proof, and it proves that the mechanism works, and it is aimed for tipping the prospect over the edge to buy your content. Typically, as middle funnel content, as I've explained, you want to illustrate the problem, and in the bottom of funnel content, you want to fix the problem. So you want to essentially give a bit of content for them to actually get into dropshipping specifically. And obviously then with your offer, you perfectly explain how to get success with it and the steps by step. Now let's look at BSM Fredo's conversion, how his funnel actually looks like. So he has a main channel on YouTube and a secondary channel. His main channel, he posts top of funnel content. Top of funnel content, as previously mentioned, attracts a low quality audience. Whereas on secondary channel, he posts middle funnel and bottom of funnel content, which attracts a higher quality audience, right? He attracts the right ideal customer profile, ICP. Right, on his main channel, He'll post lifestyle content, but he's not attracting the right type of people. So what he does is he has a link in all of his YouTube video bios on the main channel that will bring him to an opt-in page. Why an opt-in page? Because since they're not the right ICP, what that allows him to do is his setters get the information of whoever fills this out. So there's a timer. It says, I'm about to send you over a free organic dropshipping mini course. Fill out this out before the timer runs out to claim access. So you fill it out, he gets your details, really good for him. And that brings you from the opt-in page to a video to sales letter. Because he's posting top of funnel content, they're not pre-sold. As I've mentioned, you need to have at least consumed 1 to 2 hours of valuable content to be pre-sold. Because they're not pre-sold, right? He has a video to sales letter, a VSL, which is meant to sell them. That brings them to a type form, which will then either mean that they're qualified or not qualified. Then he has a bunch of testimonials, extremely important, will help obviously sell. And then if they're qualified, it'll bring them to book a Calendly. And once they book that, they will book a sales call. If they're not qualified, I'll get to that in just a second. But important to understand, the same as he does on his main channel on YouTube, the same link he puts in, he does that for his short form content, his Instagram and his TikTok. In his Instagram here, he has a link that brings you, it's like a link tree, main channel, secondary channel, and then that link that brings them to the opt-in page. Same concept, since it's top of funnel content, that it needs to be an opt-in page and then a videos to sales letter. Now, what he does different with this secondary channel, as I've mentioned, he's attracting a high quality audience, the right ICP on his secondary channel. That's why it's slightly different. And I would personally not be doing this with my creators, but it's working really well for him, so why not? In every description of every video on his secondary channel, he links this, which brings them right to a type form. And on that type form, you're either going to get qualified or not qualified. But if you're qualified, it'll bring you to this page, where it's simply, saying, attention, you're going to receive a call from BSM coach in the next few minutes. Boom. Here, a video, and what he does really well, he shows a few videos, but what he does with that is he simply answers frequently asked questions. So already objection handles his audience before they even come on a call. What does that do? Well, that allows the closer to obviously not have random questions to always handle. It makes it simply easier for the closer because he has less questions to answer. And it's a very strong, powerful tool that he's actually using here. And then again, same concept, a bunch of testimonials. So now let's get into if they're not qualified, if the leads are not qualified. What happens? Well, option one, what I typically do with my creators, they also have a low ticket. So what that does is, if they're not qualified, it sells them to a low ticket. Instead of buying a high ticket, you downsell them to a low ticket. Or you simply send them some sales assets to consume, and over time, you strategically convert them to a high ticket. Let's get into the juicier part of this video, and it's the exact strategy that's currently working across most of my offers right now. It's pure sauce, and it's what we call the YouTube flywheel. Now it differs slightly in what I've explained before, right? When I explained that as a creator, you need to position your content in 3 categories: top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel content. Now how does the strategy slightly differ? It's that your middle of funnel becomes your bottom of funnel content. Previously I'd explained how middle of funnel content is where you as a creator position yourself as an authoritative person and nurture them. That's middle of funnel content. That's what you post as middle of funnel content. Now that becomes bottom of funnel. Bottom of funnel was that conversion attention where you post testimonials and more in-depth videos where you explain them the solution. Now that becomes one. Simply put, it's value-based nurturing content. It's what attracts the right ICP, and only the right ideal customer profile will watch these videos. Now top of funnel stays the same. It's lifestyle content that attracts mass demographic. I've used Jake Ecom as an example here, and perfect top of funnel content, 3 motivation from a 20-year-old making $40K a month. It has the most view out of all, as I've previously explained. That's what top of funnel does. It gets the most views, but it doesn't have the right ICP, right? That's why it doesn't sell as well as, for example, a bottom of funnel video. Now, how does this differ specifically? Well, it's that minimum funnel is one long video that acts as your public video to sales letter. So instead of putting your VSL on a landing page, you put it into that one long video. What does that do? Well, one, it enables you to not look salesy and guru-like, which a lot of people nowadays need to do to increase their conversion. But on the other hand, it has another benefit, which I'll get into just in a second. But this minimum funnel, the public VSL, right? Typically, it should be from 30 minutes, ranging to nearly 6 hours, 7 hours. However long you can make it, right? You gotta put as much value into that video as possible, including essentially everything. Testimonials, specific strategies, motivation, where you came from, all of it. But this is typically things we discuss with our creator, and he gets all of the juice, all of the things he needs to create that video. Now, why is this so powerful? Well, I've explained previously that on average, people must watch at least 1 to 2 hours of your content to buy a high ticket offer. Well, this video, if long enough, will literally just serve as valuable content. Now, let's take, for example, Peter. He goes on Jake Ecom's channel, or he simply gets this video recommended. 3M motivation from a 20-year-old making 40K. He watches it, and in his bio, he'll see a link that brings him to this video. So both top of funnel and bottom of funnel just funnel him to that public VSL. And in the public video to sales letter, there's a Typeform link, and I'll get to in a sec how that Typeform will look like. Essentially, this video sells them. Now, on the other hand, why does YouTube push this algorithm so hard? Well, firstly, watch time and session time, right? So what is watch time? Watch time is how long somebody actually watches your video. And this is how YouTube used to handle the algorithms. But they've implemented session time, which is essentially how long someone stays on their platform. Every platform, Instagram, TikTok, want their audience, want the people that are on YouTube to stay on YouTube as long as possible. Now that's what session time does. And specifically what the YouTube flywheel enables their audience to do, to stay as long as possible on YouTube, and I'll explain this now. So yeah, YouTube cares more about people staying on the platform than staying on your video. All top of funnel content pushes directly to VSL, and that's the secret sauce of this whole YouTube flywheel. As I've explained previously, this is another top of funnel content video he posted. As an example, I made 54K last month, so I bought a Batmobile. In the description, here is his middle of funnel, his public VSL. So his top of funnel content, if someone were to if Peter clicks on that video, he will most likely, if he's interested, get funneled to that video that sells him. And then by intent, he will click on a Typeform, which I'll get to in a sec. So YouTube shows that people watch this video after his other ones, so they recommend it more. Bonus 1. Bonus 2 gives YouTube an idea of the ideal customer profile watching the VSL and shows it to more of that demographic organically, meaning more people who will actually buy your offer will actually start watching your YouTube videos, which is so important, and it boosts session time tremendously. Now going into the Typeform application. So every Typeform that we create for our creators, it will always usually start with details. So details, submit this information. Then Jake Ecom does this slightly different, but it's okay. What's your Instagram username? What is your location and age? Then it goes to what is your current experience with freelance brand scaling? What is your current monthly income? What is your desired monthly income? And what's stopping you from achieving that monthly income goal? Now, 2 very important questions, the most important questions. And what do they do? Well, they filter out qualified and unqualified leads. Let me explain you quickly why. So, the question, how confident are you that you are ready to work with me on this? Well, if someone were to not be confident, they'll get filtered out and they wouldn't be qualified. If they are 40, 80, 100, they're qualified. So they will be able to book a call on Candly and then go on the sales call. Another thing that's extremely important to filter out qualified and unqualified leads is this question. To work with me, it's a 4-figure investment since we'll be working on 101. That said, which best describes your financial situation? If you don't have enough money and you click that, you're not qualified. If you have $1,000 to $3,000, you're qualified. And C and D, obviously you're qualified as well. So you may ask yourself, why is someone qualified with $1,000 to $2,000, but the one-on-one offer costs $5,000? Well, financing is a thing, and hence, if you have to have 0 to 1,000, it makes no sense, you're unqualified. Now, the other questions, they're really important. They're not really important, but they are kind of important. Why? Because we want to track our data for all of our creators, and this data, these questions, similar to these questions, they enable us to just build up this data and know what we're doing bad and what we're doing good, right? So over time with our CRM, we will see these things and we can implement according to what we're seeing. So Jake Ecom does this slightly different than I would typically do this, but usually you will get this only if you're qualified or not, but he does it different and it kind of diminishes the point of these important questions. He doesn't really filter out his unqualified and qualified leads, but here I've visually represented a type form of one of my own creators, how it would look like. So if you're qualified, you will either, if you're qualified, get a Calendly link. So if qualified, you get a Calendly link where the potential customer, the lead, will book a sales call. And really important, it is important to only have max 40-hour bookings in advance, right? Why? Because it improves conversion, and because your customer is already pre-sold based on your public VSL, you want that sales call to be as short as possible, as close as possible to that video. Now, pre-call sequence. So what we typically want to do is we want to automate an email or a DM right before the call, just a follow-up and a confirmation prior to the call. So we're not wasting our closers' time, or whoever, or if we have some creators who are on sales calls, not waste our creators' time. Now, if you're unqualified, you go to this. If you're unqualified, as I've explained before, BSM Creator does as well, you get downsold and you're gonna get nurtured into the funnel. Now, why is this type form so important? I've explained, it filters out leads in the type form. Now this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's quite a long one, but if any of this is to interest you, if any of this applies to you, send me them through Instagram. Love to chat, offer some advice, and maybe we could even hop on a call. Thank you.